I'm often asked what type of training is involved when becoming a long-term undercover agent. First, let me just say that the training that I got, I'm forever grateful for. I attended 2 long-term undercover schools. Absent the training that I got from those experienced long-term undercover agents and mentors, I would have crashed and burned. There's no way I could have successfully done long-term undercover without their support. Unfortunately, I know a lot of undercover agents that either didn't get this type of training or failed to abide by it. Some lost their reputation, some lost their job, some lost their families, and some lost their freedom. Like one agent that I focused on in the Betrayal book who outed me to the leadership of the Cali Cartel and nearly got me killed. But I'm blessed with insights from experienced staff that were part of the undercover schools that I attended, including former FBI agent Joe Pistone, who the book and the movie Donnie Brasco is based upon. Joe became a mentor and is a very good friend of mine for decades, and I can't thank him enough for his insights and training. Another is New Jersey State Police Officer Bobby Delaney, author of Covert, another very experienced, very talented long-term undercover agent who was part of helping me to build my assets as a long-term undercover agent. But even before going through undercover school, long-term undercover agents need to be psychologically profiled. Some, frankly, are just not suited to do that type of work and are at greater risk to crash and burn. What are the psychologists looking for? I think they're looking for people who don't overly rationalize what is right and what is wrong. People who see things principally black and white, correct, not rationalizing away what is or isn't correct. When I went through undercover schools, there were some very fundamental things that we had to be taught, like how to build an undercover identity, how to backstop it properly so that the targets couldn't determine that there were any flaws and that you weren't who you claimed to be. You also have to be very experienced in knowing how to use and fix recording equipment, because when you're in a long-term undercover setting without backstopping, without a backup team, you can't call somebody and have them come to the location. You have to be able to deal with that on your own. How to draft an undercover proposal, knowing the resources and expenses and the equipment and the personnel and the prosecution goals and what security would be involved. These are all important fundamental things. There are also issues that I now share as an instructor for the Department of Homeland Security in their undercover school about techniques used by defense attorneys to attempt to embarrass and undermine the credibility of either undercover agents or undercover operations in the eyes of jurors. There are definitely 8 or 9 very specific techniques that they use, and it's important for agents to know what those are well in advance. Of course, how to write certain reports, whether to write a report or not, whether to record, not to record, these are all extraordinarily important. And of course, the psychological pitfalls and how to avoid them, how to stay rooted, how to avoid role reversal. There are some very nuanced things that need to be taught to undercover agents, and that has to do with enhancing rapport and communication. That was such a very, very important part of training for me in long-term undercover schools. So much so that I took the principles of enhancing rapport and communication for long-term undercover agents and turned it into training today for senior executives in any type of a corporate setting. They need to know how to enhance rapport and communication, not just with peers, but with subordinates, with superiors, with people who they are doing business with. So much of that is applicable to just about any type of industry, and it's also applicable to you in your personal life. When it comes to enhancing rapport and communication, there's some fundamentals. You have to care enough about the success that you have with your target audience to do your homework. You know, there's a tremendous advantage for me to know the likes and dislikes of a person that I'm going to meet before I meet them, especially if they're a bad guy that I want to establish rapport with. There are many, many different ways through social media and through other methods to learn those things. You know, you need to develop an operational plan also when it comes to dealing with others. You need to create your own virtual reality. And I clearly remember times when I was so focused on creating my own virtual reality that before meeting with bad guys for a day or two, I might be in the same room that I knew that I was going to have a meeting at and visualize them there. And I would visualize how I would try to nudge the conversation in the directions that I wanted to. And of course, there are multiple different responses that people could make. And I would visualize those responses, the most challenging and difficult responses so that I could figure out how it is that I would be able to react to those, no matter what the response might be. And after 2 days, when I had the meeting, I can tell you that no matter how that meeting went, for me, it was a rerun. I had visualized the meeting going in so many different directions that I visualized it in the way that it did go. And I had such a tremendous advantage because I knew how to take the conversation in the direction that I wanted to. Another thing is really finding answers with silence and active listening. You know, there's no more effective way to get people to talk than for you to make an open-ended statement and then stop speaking and look at them in an inquisitive way where they know that you're expecting them to fill the silence. They become so awkward not filling the silence that they do. I mean, if I'm with a bad guy and I say, well, what exactly is it that you can do for me? And I can look at him with a tilted head and an inquisitive look. And if I don't say anything, within the first 5 seconds or so, they're going to feel like they need to fill it in. And they do. Earning trust. You know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so you need to get people to recognize that you have earned their trust, and there are ways of doing that. There are ways of using passive reinforcements. You know, it's not very powerful if you're the one who has to tell them things about you all the time. But if they see things that cause them to come to a conclusion, that's very powerful. So I played the role of a mob-connected money launderer in the Infiltrator story, and I never said that I was, but I did take them to social clubs where you had to either be a mobster or a politician or both in order to be a member. And I did have a lifestyle with a Rolls Royce, a Jaguar, expensive home, a private jet. All of those things said something to them. And I never had to say anything about any of those items. As a matter of fact, if I did, it would take away from the importance of the passive reinforcement for it. There are definitely other things that undercover agents need to know. One of the things that are most important is you in the business world, or you as an undercover agent, need to recognize that your body and your brain are very, very tightly connected. You have to train to be the best you, not just in knowing undercover techniques, but taking good care of your own health as a core value. Conditioning of your body and your mind, eating right, sleeping right. There are so many things that need to be taken into consideration.